turn to Mr. Austin Glenn to lead us through his presentation.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this is the September 3rd Goochland County Board of Supervisors Transportation Workshop. The agenda for today, as far as the number of items, is fairly short. However, I do expect to have some good conversation throughout the agenda itself. We're going to talk about, as always, first the current studies and projects, things that are underway in the county, recap any underway projects or things we expect to start construction here in the near future. Two of those that are mentioned briefly in the current studies and projects portion, but we'll have some additional conversation about, are the Ashland Road I-64 interchange, as well as the Rockville Road safety study that was requested. And then we'll finish it up with the Goochland Transportation Project Priority Update. Last workshop, we presented some draft scoring criteria, weights, ranking categories, and so on for ranking transportation priorities in the county. So as we work to set a transportation CIP, if you will, our consultant RK&K gave us back some revised weights, and already working through that ranking process with these revised weights, but wanted to present them to the board for I guess a final consideration and any additional comments. So with that, I will jump right into the current studies and projects. The first one, transportation project priority number one, has been and will be until it's completed, is the Ashland Road interchange. Field survey and geotechnical borings are underway. One update to that, the geotechnical borings are complete as of now. The only borings that are not done and will be done before the end of the year are on the bridge itself. The last round of borings, we did share all the information on the county social media as well as news flashes, occurred at night. So hopefully little impact to the traveling public for those. When we do the new borings on the bridge, the hope is that we will do those at night as well to minimize the impact to the traveling public. For the interchange itself, we have the interchange access report, or the IAR. There was a public engagement survey portion of the study that closed in the middle of July. Really what that was looking at is comparing the two best performing options, which was the divergent diamond interchange, as well as what's called an expanded traditional diamond, which is essentially the same exact footprint we have now. That's called a traditional diamond, but instead of it being one lane in each direction, it would be 2 lanes in each direction. So comparing from the public standpoint what each of those alternatives look like. We had roughly 450 participants making almost 3,000 unique responses with almost 350 free-form comments. Talking to VDOT, that's a substantial amount of input from the public for a study in this part of the state. So we were fortunate to have that amount of input. It did ultimately, with a slight edge, the DDI was the favorite from the public standpoint, as well as the, lost the word. From the data standpoint, the DDI was also the preferred alternative. So that is what is going to be selected and has been submitted to VDOT Central Office and FHWA for review. So that will be the alternative that is being considered finally by the federal government. It's scheduled to be approved by FHWA in October of this year. The report does detail impacts to cost and to Bennington Road, which is what we'll discuss here in just a little bit. And construction, as always, is scheduled to start mid of 2028 and being completed in 2031. Any questions on interchange?
I didn't find any rock when they did those borings out there, did they?
I don't know the findings.
I was just kidding. I'm sure there's a lot in that area.
What else? I just like to comment.
Yes.
We talk a lot about these studies that we do.
Yes.
These are actually part of the project process, right?
Correct.
So these aren't studies that we're doing for feasibility. This is
Correct.
part of the actual project.
Yeah, this IAR is actually step 1 in the preliminary engineering phase of the project.
It was said that the DDI was the winner and the data was the winner, and so it was selected by whom?
It was selected by the working group of myself and the counterparts at VDOT.
Okay. So I didn't remember voting on that, and I was afraid I was having a brain freeze there. So I don't remember that.
So the Hockett Road realignment. Some of you may recall there was a public hearing held on June 11th at the Dover Baptist Church. With that, VDOT has acknowledged they made an error with property owner notifications. So they, well, or lack thereof, they didn't notify any adjacent property owners or impacted property owners for that road realignment. So with that, they posted what's called a willingness to hold a second location public hearing, which means they put all the information out and somebody just can call up and say, I request that you hold a public hearing. That has happened in this case.
It has.
So we have County staff did receive that request. It has been passed along to the appropriate VDOT staff, and the date and time will be shared once available. Any questions on Concord Road? All right, so another one of our priority projects is the Oldville interchange with I-64 westbound. I did put a picture of the most recent rendering, which is also now on the county website, of the single lane roundabout that is proposed to be installed. VDOT has posted again a willingness to hold a public hearing. There aren't really any alignments to choose from. There really aren't any design considerations that would differ here, so we felt the willingness was the appropriate option. We have only received one citizen comment to date thus far. It was an email received on August 27th requesting a traffic signal in lieu of a roundabout. That email, I believe, was shared with the board, and I did share it with VDOT, but I do want to read at least a portion of VDOT's response to that. So the comment from the citizen was, and I'll paraphrase, with the majority of the traffic at peak hours heading south on Oldville Road from the interchange, a traffic light with an adjustable green light to allow those lefts onto Oldville Road would be a better solution. The same lights have served Rockville, Madigan interchange for years. So that is essentially the email from the citizen. The response from VDOT that I do concur with entirely is, number one, a traffic analysis was done, which also has been posted to the county website, that the interchange itself does not warrant a traffic signal based on traffic volumes. And when traffic signals are not warranted, a roundabout is best suited to be installed to mitigate that congestion. As for the truck volume, the roundabout is currently being designed for a tractor trailer, an interstate tractor trailer, known as the WB-67 or a 67-foot long trailer. And the truck volumes were considered when the analysis was completed. And the exhibit that I've shown on the screen here, there's another exhibit again that is posted on the county website as an attachment to that page, as the what's called turning movements, or it shows a tractor trailer navigating this particular roundabout, and it does so with very little issue. So that's it will mount the truck apron as designed, but an interstate tractor trailer, which is the largest design vehicle VDOT accounts for, navigates this with relative ease.
And that yellow, just so I know, that yellow is the apron you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the orangish
right?
yellow
Yeah.
color is that apron.
So we're not, we don't have a ledge or anything.
Correct. It'll be
more than enough wiggle room.
much like what's right here. It'll be that mountable, really flat curb, so that way trucks can access it.
Just point of information. I have enjoyed that off-ramp at peak hours, and it does back all the way back.
Yes.
What does it take to warrant a traffic signal if traffic backed up onto the interstate doesn't?
The simplest way to describe it is a relatively equal volume of traffic from each direction. Because there's only really one direction that's peak, which you noted is from the interstate. That's ultimately why it's not warranted, because there's not sufficient traffic on Oldville Road itself coming to and from Hanover County and Broad Street that it would essentially be a signal for only one direction.
Okay, I'm not gonna, thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
Regardless of whether it's backed up on 64.
Correct.
Arbitrary.
I always say that the two hardest things to do with VDOT are to lower a speed limit and to get a traffic signal approved. And it's that seems to hold true in every scenario. All right, so 3 projects on the screen real quick. Fairground Road Extension, much like I had in July, there's not much to update the board on. It's still very much underway. We did receive updated plans on August 22nd. We have a slight review window that's open now that I'm looking through the plans. There's really not anything remarkable that stands out as far as any issues. The design just continues, and we are slated to start construction in 2026. Smart Scale Round 6, initial project scoring is expected in February of next year with final funding decisions in June of next year. I actually have had some back and forth with VDOT today and late last week about a couple of the applications, just fine tuning a couple details. VDOT's asking a few questions as they progress through their screening, so that process is underway and has a lot of momentum. And then the West Creek Area Transportation Access Study, I did mention this in the July workshop, that it's really a study to test our major thoroughfare plan roads and determine if we need any additional improvements based on the currently identified comprehensive plan land use designations. So it's not looking at any land use changes, it's just if it does build out, is a major thoroughfare plan or not, is really what that's looking to do. and we're hoping that study will be completed in summer of 2025. Any questions?
I want to make sure I'm clear on the comprehensive plan projections, not
Yes.
current zoning. Is that-
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Because most
So I
of that
believe-
is still A2.
The vast majority, if not all of that land, is prime economic development in the comprehensive plan with a lot of that M2 area, but it's based on the comp plan designation.
All right, thank you.
One final project I wanted to touch on that's starting to gain some momentum, one that I'm actually pretty excited about, is what I'm dubbing the Farmers Market Crosswalk. Met with VDOT this morning to discuss the permit requirements, but really what we're looking to do is put a striped crosswalk with all the necessary signage for drivers to be alerted to the crosswalk between what's I've always called the Napa parking lot, or that lower field parking lot, and what's currently the Farmers Market location. There's hills on either side of the road. It'll provide a better, safer pedestrian access with that sidewalk to be included to and from that parking lot, to and from the farmer's market, either or used for overflow parking. So it's something that we're looking forward to getting done. There will be the need to post a surety with VDOT for work within the right of way. That's something that I'm working through, trying to get the details on that. Tara, I'm probably going to want to get with y'all's office. I did find a resolution from 2017 where the board authorized the county administrator to enter into land use permits. It didn't necessarily speak to sureties, so that's something I want to certainly circle up, Tara, with your office on. And then one question I have out to VDOT is, in order for VDOT to assume maintenance of that sidewalk, it's my assumption that we're going to need to dedicate the necessary right of way around that sidewalk, which doesn't really impact the use of that property. It's just something we want to take care of, so that way VDOT will be on the hook for any maintenance for that. Any questions on the crosswalk?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Is there any reason we wouldn't try to continue the sidewalk in front of the whole thing, so people will park right up on there, and then so to use the sidewalk to get to the crosswalk? So I guess that would be eastbound down to the other entrance.
So we've had discussions about, at the top of the hill where the sidewalk's being installed, put some sort of fence or some sort of barrier to essentially force folks that want to walk to go to either entrance. They'll see that the sidewalk's at this entrance, and if using the crosswalk, they'll hopefully make their way down to the entrance to the roundabout, rather than that northern entrance closer this direction.
Okay, let me repeat. So
Okay.
we have sidewalk coming from this entrance to where the crosswalk is.
Correct.
Shouldn't we have it from the other entrance to this entrance?
That's something we can explore. It was not a part of the package that was approved for the study, because for a mid-block crosswalk, you have to get a study approved to show that it meets all the site distance and spacing to the next crosswalk and so on.
Yeah, not another crosswalk, just
Right.
a sidewalk to it.
That's something I can bring up in my conversation. I know the land use engineer for VDOT is out for medical reasons for the next 2 weeks, I believe. So once he's back in the office, I do plan on setting up a meeting with him to discuss this project in general, but I'll be happy to add that.
Thank you.
Would that be about a quarter mile or so? How long would that sidewalk be?
No, a few hundred feet.
So we'd only need $500,000 for that.
What's the time frame of this project, like relative to the fairgrounds extension?
Oh, I mean, this will be, the goal for this would be to put in before the end of this paving season, when the striping won't be affected by the cold weather. Worst case, it would be early spring next year,
Okay.
when paving season kind of reopens.
Gotcha.
But we weren't allowed to even apply for the permit until they completed the paving job, because that's the way the project closeout process works.
Sometime for the fall festival and tree lighting.
Potentially, that's the goal.
Okay.
All right, so as I mentioned in my opening, the Ashland Road interchange, I did want to have some more discussion about outside of the normal recap. As mentioned before, the DDI is the selected alternative, so for all intents and purposes, unless FHWA pulls the rug out from under us, that will be what is installed at the Ashland Road interchange. I know we've had a lot of discussion that is what we hoped would be coming, but now it's all but official that the DDI will be the alternative that is constructed. The report, as I mentioned, does detail Bennington Road impacts. In the current intersection location adjacent to that park and ride, Bennington would be restricted to a right-in, right-out. Several property owners, along with one existing business down Bennington Road, voiced serious concern about the prospect of their only usable entrance becoming a right-in, right-out. The draft report, however, does show Bennington being relocated to align with Martin Marietta's entrance, which I think is also called Forest Road. So it is showing about I think it's a 500 or so foot extension of Bennington Road to reconnect with Ashland, providing a full access. I do have Here's a large blow-up schematic of the interchange itself. That, again, you can see the weave pattern. We are building a second bridge, and you can see Bennington Road on the far left here, which I do have a blow-up of. So you can see it is being extended again, that 500 or so foot to line up with Martin Marietta's entrance. Again, I believe is called Forest Road. So any questions on the interchange before I move on to something else?
In your previous slides, you had
Yes.
said that you were looking at, or you chose between the single lane diamond or the double lane diamond.
So the alternatives that were compared were obviously alternative number one. Alternative number two is what's called a traditional expanded diamond, which is the same exact footprint we have now, except that instead of one lane in each direction, it would be 2 lanes.
Right.
So we're still getting a 4-lane highway, but the one that was kicked out was, instead of having that weave, it would just be a standard diamond interchange,
Okay.
but with the new bridge.
But it's still 2 lanes?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. So no matter what the improvement was going to be, it was going to be 2 lanes in each direction.
gotcha.
Hey, can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
So this Bennington Road extension wouldn't be an issue because that orange line is effectively where the current parking ride.
Yes.
No, there's the current parking
Yeah,
lot.
the orange hash.
Where is that going through? If I look at that new extension, where is that going through?
As far as the new Bennington Road.
Yes.
So it's going through what is right now just wooded, kind of cut over scrub that's owned by Republic. It's
Okay.
that parcel that fronts
Okay.
Action Road that they own.
Okay. And then,
So also there be envisioned a stoplight at Bennington?
Long term, we don't have as a county, I shouldn't say plans, we don't have in the major thoroughfare plan, it does not call out for signalizing any intersections north of I-64. The arterial management plan that was done, I believe in 2015, was mostly focused on south of 64 on Ashland Road and then Broad Street to the county line rather than north of 64. I think that's something that, especially as this gains momentum and gets into construction, as we continue to see development north of 64, that's something we probably want to explore. We know there's, whenever Project Rocky does develop, there's proffered conditions, no matter what happens on that property, for a signal to be installed there. I believe there's the spacing, talking to VDOT, for another signal between any entrance Rocky may put in to the signal associated with the interchange. But north of that, we don't really have any long-term outlook on Ashland Road north of 64.
So 2 follow-ups. You mentioned the park and ride.
Yes.
How do we ensure that we keep our eyes on the park and ride? That's because we can't do this until the park and ride is moved.
Correct.
So how do we tie these 2 projects together to make sure that park and ride doesn't slow us down on this if we can move forward?
So the park and ride, you can see kind of the white rectangle on here. It's just an overlay. It can't see it on the screen, but it's an overlay of the park and ride plans. The project for that is a completely separate process through VDOT. It was funded completely separately. That is underway now. The goal for VDOT is to have that completely operable long before construction starts for the interchange, because they want to use the existing park and ride as kind of a lay down,
Right.
have the construction trailers and so on, which I think makes a lot of sense. So we can actually use the facility for something other than just demoing it.
I think our goal is to try to, I know you showed the dates, our goal is to try to rein that in much closer to today than further out. So looking at that, and then kind of following up with our chairman, and when we started talking about Bennington Road, economic development, I believe, had some thoughts about that being prime economic development property right there. How does this realignment, it does that, because it looks like, can you get something in between that, or is that now just dead?
No, so you're talking about between the new Bennington and Ashland Road. So that's all going to be in right of way. So there won't be any usable land between New Bennington and Ashland Road.
Is it currently in right of way?
You can see there's the yellow line on the screen. I don't have the pointer with me, but there's a faint yellow line on the left side of the screen, and it's current right of way. The red line that goes around the Bennington extension would be future or soon to be needed right of way.
Red or orange?
yeah,
Yes.
you did prefer either one.
Oh, okay. Pick one.
So this is, okay, so, because I think, sir, you guys were talking about like, hey, can you make that something so that there's economic development between the road and Ashland Road, or Bennington Road and Ashland Road? And it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that.
This realignment is really the simplest, shortest, cheapest option that could be wrapped into the interchange project. I think any other realignment, future realignment of Bennington Road through the 623 parcel, I don't necessarily think that this hinders those conversations. I think this is in order to make sure it stays full access, again, at the shortest path and the cheapest possible option, rather than doing a more full-fledged realignment.
Okay, thanks.
So with the Bennington realignment, I will discuss cost real quick. So the IAR did detail, again, impact to the cost estimate. The project currently has $75.9 million allocated to it. Through the IAR process, a cost estimate has been provided, and I want to provide two numbers for you. The interchange improvements without Bennington Road comes to just shy of 85 million, and the interchange improvements with Bennington Road comes to just over 88 million. So there's two deficits on the project, whether we do Bennington Road's realignment or whether we don't do Bennington Road's realignment. For the purposes of the conversation, I'm assuming we are going to move forward with the Bennington Road realignment, and that will total a $12.4 million estimate, or deficit, excuse me. There's no immediate action required, as both the engineering and right-of-way phases are fully funded, because it's not $80 million to pull the sets of plans together. So fortunately, we do have some time to make the decision, but I do think it's never too early to start having the conversation about where do we possibly get the funding from. As the design is refined, VDOT will continue to evaluate the project cost, which is good and bad. As we understand the footer design for the bridge, as we understand we have to relocate a water line, we kind of refine what those costs are going to look like. That is something that will continually evolve. So we're going to continue to track those costs and provide a accurate, at the time, cost estimate for the board to, or for no matter which path we see, we'll have a more accurate deficit number. But based on the $12.4 million deficit, there really are two possible paths to funding any deficit, local and regional. Local options include, earmarking CBTA local funds, proffers, or other general fund dollars as needed. If it does get to a point where it's a substantial amount of money, there's local bonds that could be issued as well through any kind of referendum. There are also regional options. Reapply for CBTA regional funds. And I do want to note that there is a max 10% increase that can be awarded administratively. In other words, it doesn't have to go to the full authority. It can be decided to tap. And that would actually equal $3.37 million on this project, because it's 10% of the CBTA award, which we have $34 million on. Or seek any funds through any CBTA issued bonds or anything that the full body may take on. But one thing I do want to note is the smart scale funds cannot be used for the Bennington Road improvements, and that's because Bennington Road's realignment was not a part of the scope that was awarded smart scale funds. This was more of an after effect or a betterment that we're adding on at a later date. So those are really some options that we will continue to keep our tabs on. Is that I'm always an optimist that the deficit will decrease, but we'll see. As we continually refine those costs, we'll really explore any and all options.
Awesome. Mr. Chair, why do you think that deficit will decrease?
Because I'm an optimist.
All right. Awesome. Now, can you be a realist and what do you really, I'm an optimist also, but you hope for the best and plan for the worst. And if we're going to be asked to come up with $12 million, I don't want to start planning to come up with 7 and
Right.
say, whoops, I don't want another school situation.
No, when I say that my hopes the deficit decreases is that when we do need the money, we only have to find 7. But right now, it's prudent for us to start planning on 12, maybe even a little more,
Yes.
just as we start earmarking funds. Not necessarily allocating or appropriating funds, but starting to just set things aside and earmarking them so that way, when the time comes, we're able to just pull that money from whatever pot we designated from and move on.
I think our county administrator will advise that there will be numerous requests for funding for various departments.
Yes.
And while transportation is one of my big 3, I like the sheriff and I like the first responders and I like education. So I appreciate the optimism, but I'm going to go away thinking we're going to have to come up with 12 or 13, 14, just because I haven't seen prices come down on much anything.
And we haven't either. Again, I'm just optimistic that it'll either stay put or go down, but we will see. No, you're right. We, as of right now, it's fortunate that we don't need to make a decision today and have to come up with $12 million, because that's not a small amount of money. Yes.
Those costs too, if we assume construction starts at X date, those costs factor in escalators and inflation-based escalators for that
Correct.
planned start date. So we're not necessarily, I mean, we are preparing, maybe not to the full extent, at least somewhat, based on recent inflation.
Yeah, I don't know the exact inflation factor on this particular project, but it is substantial, and it's based on historical cost estimating that we've seen just steadily increase time after time. But Mr. Spooner, to your point earlier, as we hopefully find ways to accelerate the timeline, does that eventually save us a few dollars on the inflation side? Because if we're fortunate enough to kick the start date up a whole year, that may save a substantial amount of inflation.
Yes.
Was the park and ride being used as that holding area part of the plan that got funded, or the funding that got approved? Or that seems like a major cost savings. I didn't know if that was in the scope or if it's been added.
The scope hasn't been refined to the point where they've identified the park and ride as the definite staging area for the project. However, it's just been discussed through plan development, and as the project begins to kick off, that, boy, that sure makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's incorporate that in the plans.
That's great.
But there's really, for maintenance of traffic and construction staging, there's always just a percentage assumed of the total project cost. I can't say whether or not we'd save any money.
Okay.
I have a feeling that even if we saved $500,000, something else will naturally go up $500,000.
And we are at the whim
It's not
of
very
VDOT in
optimistic
that
there.
situation.
Correct. The cost estimates will be, they've entered into the realm of, they review cost estimates about every quarter. So this will go through a fine tooth comb. How many quarters do we have between now and 28? I mean, that's numerous times that the cost estimate will get revised.
So just, good.
It does make some sense to improve the Bennington Road from the standpoint of what do we do to help economic development on the east side of it. Even though you can't do it between the two, you still have that whole side where a lot of economic development potential. So if you approve it, that may hasten it, increase the schedule a little bit for the economic development.
Well, and not only do we want to maintain access for future opportunities, but we have an existing business down there that's raised some substantial concerns, and they've not been quiet about it, which is good. I mean, I've told them to bug me until we get this thing done and make sure that it stays full access. So I've been looking at it from both standpoints. It's making sure that future opportunities are there, as well as what do we do for the existing businesses on Bennington Road. So I'm happy that,
Do you have your bus bill?
yes, I'm happy that VDOT and FHWA initially signaled that they'd be willing to consider this realignment.
So I just want to give some context, which will follow a question and actually a request.
Okay.
So just to remind, so we're at a $12.4 million. If you take out the Bennington Road, that's around $8 million. Just to remind everybody, this project started as for 4 years, we went after the solution that VDOT told us, which was a $16 million solution. So the original solution that we chased for 4 years, our number one transportation project, was $16 million. Then it went to 75.9, and now we're sitting at 84.5. So that's just some context of why my head is literally spinning around, or figuratively spinning around my shoulders. I would like to see what these big cost increases are by category. So we need to start asking them what is jacking up these costs? And I doubt there's anything we can do to mitigate it, but at least starting to hold people to the fire. Like, this is every time we get an update, it's tens of millions of dollars more. So I'm done there.
Okay.
I got something else.
Yes.
Is the Bennington Road, is that a separate project from the interchange project?
No, it will be constructed at the same time.
Okay, that was where I was
That's
going
the
with
current
this. Is
plan.
it gonna be
Yep.
constructed prior or after?
The current plan is to have it be folded right into the construction.
Gotcha.
So how much discretion do we have on that? It sounds like it's diminished with VDOT.
Discretion as far
As
as,
far as whether or not to super improve Bennington Road.
well, I mean, right now the discretion is we kind of force VDOT's hand to make them fold it into the interchange project.
Okay.
At first, it was not going to be considered because, to be completely frank, the Bennington Road realignment does not impact the interchange at all. It's really about keeping existing businesses having full access and not restricting access to future opportunities. Finally, VDOT bit, and we were able to have this be a part of the report.
And just another piece of that. So there was a sort of a conscious decision after we went after this, because you can argue, well, it's like one or two businesses, then the county's going to now have to come up with an extra $4 million to protect two businesses.
What's the return?
However, when government comes in and says, you're a trucking company, and we're going to block your access to the interstate, and we're going to send you to Parkside, by the way. So we're going to send you down that way. We felt it was a better thing to go this route.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong about that, but it still seems to be the right way to go.
Yeah.
One interesting aspect also of the 12.4 million is remember that 2.4 of that is directly VDOT overhead. So the 12.4 million that's going up, 2.4 that's going into their pocket, not into the construction.
Yep, that's something, there's a set percentage on every estimate.
That's what I want to see.
That's VDOT CEI, which is Construction Administration.
I really like your point about a good return on economic development. I mean, you don't want to spend $2 to make one.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, the government should come in either, and somebody was making one, they're only making 50 cents. Right, that's, I think so.
Yep. Any other questions on the actual road interchange? All right. So, Rockville Road Safety Study. As mentioned in July, staff did request VDOT perform a safety study on Rockville Road. That will take place from Ashland Road to the Hanover County line. The last study was done for the same distance in 2016. Staff has requested VDOT focus on a couple of issues, line of sight issues based on the existing geometry of Rockville Road, speeding, and then the entrance at Tuckahoe Bridge Section 2. While the whole study is scheduled to be completed in late October, VDOT and actually the Sheriff's Office as well did make speed data available to me ahead of time, and the average speeds are on the screen. So the average speed the Sheriff's Office captured, which was at one location, essentially at the entrance to Tuckahoe Bridge Section 2, was 42 miles per hour.
When was that done?
2 weeks ago?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I believe two weeks ago. The average speed that VDOT captured on Rockville Road across the entire corridor within Goochland County is 46 miles an hour. And I noted the 85th percentile speed on here because that number matters. VDOT's goal is to have the posted speed limit on any road be within 5 miles an hour of the 85th percentile. So 85% of people that drive that road go that speed or slower. And the 85th percentile on Rockville Road is 50 miles an hour. Again, that is for the entire corridor, both directions. So I thought that data was actually telling and frankly surprising to me. I actually thought the average speeds would have been higher, given a lot of the conversation that we've had, and also just anecdotally the experiences I've had as a kid growing up in the county driving on Rockville Road. The peak speed the Sheriff's Office captured was 74, but that was pretty much the lone outlier. And again, that was captured right at the entrance to Tuckahoe Bridge. And the full results of the study will be presented to the board once we have them. Again, it's scheduled to be late October, and we will look for the most convenient, earliest opportunity to present that to the board. Any questions on Rockville Road and the study to date? Okay. So, there we go. On Rockville Road as well, staff did receive another citizen email regarding Rockville Road with some concerns. The email does note that school buses won't be stopping at the entrance to Tuckahoe Bridge Section 2 due to safety concerns. It's my understanding that the safety concerns are the same safety concerns about the topography and the geometry of Rockville Road at the entrance. I think it's important to note that this is a school's only decision, and county staff and VDOT are not involved in where bus stops are or are not located. Really, it's up to the school board and school staff where they feel is safe and appropriate. And then also noted in the email from the school's transportation department that given the state of the development and construction, buses will not be entering the development at this time to pick up students due to the fact that dumpsters and construction vehicles are blocking the travelway as they continue to build out the subdivision. I did want to just bring that up and see if there's any questions or comments about this.
Also to be said about if the roads are not in the state, be maintained by the state, but buses don't go.
I don't know if that's a rule or a policy, I'm not sure. Yes.
Signs have been discussed also, a stop ahead.
Okay.
And there's been some discussion as to who requests it, who authorizes it, and who installs it. I live on Mannequin, and are there any bus stop ahead sign? I
don't believe that.
None pop into my head.
Okay.
That bus must stop. I haven't counted, but it seems like 26 times between Saturn Lights and my place. So
Okay.
I didn't know there were that many children.
The only issue I think we face is year to year.
Yeah.
Those could be moved, you know, and that's why I think
who
the dedicated
authorizes it,
signage
yeah.
is not something that comes into play.
Is that something you want me to ask? My assumption is it's a VDOT approved sign that they would have to be, I don't know if the installers, but the ones that approve the.
It has come up as a
Okay.
solution, and particularly with some of the line of sight that you don't see, that gives somebody, hey, there's a bus stop ahead.
Right. Okay.
Sort of like blind driveway or
Right.
something like that.
I mean,
I
I can
don't
ask
have an
you-
answer. I don't know who requests,
Okay.
who approves, and then who installs.
So I'm happy to ask VDOT. I'm actually hoping to meeting with them tomorrow morning just to discuss some other things, just to see what that process would entail.
There'd be almost, I see your point on bus stops ahead, but because it's moving year to year,
Yeah.
just maybe general postings at half miles or something like that, random school bus stops, almost something, you know, that doesn't hold us to changing it on a regular basis, because I'm sure that's why VDOT doesn't have them on the Hawkins
That's
and
a good
Mannequins
question.
of the world, but they nonetheless would make people aware that during certain times of the year, hey, don't expect this to be a freeway
Right.
from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Right. Okay.
And there might be a range on that too, you know, within between 30 and, 75 feet from a known bus stop. So if the bus stop does change and fall within that range, then
Yeah. It's something I can at least reach out and see what the process
What have you
entails.
done
Yeah.
on places where, you know,
Yeah, I anticipate the question will be asked more than once, and
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
just looking for a heat shield that says,
Yeah.
well, here's the answer.
Happy to do it.
X requests, D approves, and C installs, or it's XXX,
Yep.
whatever. Thank you.
The citizens' concerns are safety,
Yes.
and there's a pending application there from a developer along that road that, and the citizens are concerned more with safety because of that. So, does VDOT ever work with the potential developer to say, how do we work together to make this safer?
So VDOT is involved in any review of the traffic studies themselves, which generally outlines what road improvements will be done as a part of any land use case when it does go to construction. I know in that particular case, VDOT and the applicant and myself have been in several meetings to discuss possibilities to improve, Rockville Road.
Great.
Any other questions on Rockville Road? All right. So I'll move into the Goochland Transportation Project Priority Update. As a reminder, staff did contract with RK&K to assist in developing a priority framework. This is step one in developing the criteria for the prioritization of any transportation improvement project, creating ranking categories, assigning weights to the categories, and RK&K has presented the revised draft categories and weights for consideration. I'll flip to that slide right now. So the benefit scoring criteria is broken down out of 100. Safety's 35% of any score, congestion 25, economic development 25, and multimodal accessibility 15%. Previously in July, I did present categories of cost effectiveness and readiness. They were, through the conversation we had in that workshop, combined into more of a readiness prioritization category. And it will look at things like cost effectiveness, the stage of the project, what funding sources might be available for that particular project, as well as any environmental concerns. That comes up really when you're looking for federal dollars. You want to make note of any environmental pitfalls that you may have. In this category, really will allow more of a subjective prioritization of the projects. And I do have an example on the screen. I'll go ahead and read that. Project A is ranked 4th out of the pure benefit score at the top, but it has an extremely high cost. Project B is ranked 8th in the pure benefit score, but does solve a priority safety need and is relatively low cost. With the readiness prioritization that we can pretty much put on a project, that Project B can be prioritized over Project A because of its cost effectiveness. Really, it allows the subjectiveness that the board or staff or whoever can look at the list and say, yeah, they're ranked empirically according to the benefit score, but we really think Project A or Project B is a much more high priority because of its low cost and it's solving a known safety problem. So that's something that I think will allow the board, again, that flexibility to set the priorities, not only based on the score, but also what the feedback is. Any questions on the scoring criteria and the
Can you remind us what
readiness?
they were?
So take 5% off of each one is what they were, and that 20% was taken from the effectiveness and readiness category or categories and put on each one of those. And then again, we kind of made there's the objective benefit scoring and then the subjective readiness prioritization at the bottom is really how it breaks out.
Great.
So even though, I like your example, it makes sense, but let's just say we had a B plus and a B minus.
Okay.
Close enough, but then we would use that subjective
Right.
to just, I mean, I don't think we ever want to go, I think we do want to stress the scoring does have, we want to give the scoring credence from the very beginning, but really stress, like, we're not talking about A's and C's getting adjusted off of subjectivity, but if we're in, in that realm, in a tighter window,
Right.
that is when that subjectivity comes
And part of it really is also the funding sources that are available, because Project B may only be eligible for Smart Scale, which is once every other year, but Project A or C may be eligible for several pots, which come about every year. So it also provides that discretion as well that, well, why are we chasing the 8th ranked instead of the 2nd ranked? Well, we can't because it's not eligible for that pot of money. So we've got to be able to chase the money that is in front of us.
Okay. Good.
Any questions on that?
Who do we give credit for coming up with this?
Really, RK&K, they were able to pull together all that framework and
You
everything.
gonna take their credit?
So it's what we pay the consultants.
I think it's a clever solution. I like the way that they thought about it.
I'm just
Yes.
imagining, and this is based on conversations and emails in the past. If
Yeah.
safety were made 40% or 50% because of some of the chatter that safety is absolutely, does that really just kind of skew everything and it just becomes in a safety ranking? If at some point you can overweight something to where it doesn't matter what the other ratings come in.
There is that concern, and overall, really, these, as far as the relative scoring from one benefit category to another, whereas, safety and congestion are 10 points apart and so on, that's very consistent with what the funding pots look like.
Yeah, and they're also pretty similar. I mean, congestion
Correct.
creates, more cars, more accidents.
Right. The reason why we kind of pulled together the criteria the way they are is really based on Smart Scale, which is the big funding pot that we have the access to the most money through. Safety isn't 50% through that. I believe it's only 30 or 35 total percentage points through Smart Scale. Again, because we want our criteria to rank the projects similarly to how the state essentially would rank them, because that way we hope they would be successful. We don't want to have a project with 75% safety scoring or 50% safety scoring and then flub out in every funding category because we didn't take anything else into consideration.
That's why I'm anticipating conversations I'm going to be having. And so, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the categories or weights?
Good work on this.
And then as a reminder, the timeline for this project completion is through the fall, which I'm hard to believe we are now thoroughly in the fall of 24. Staff and RK&K will use the criteria to rank the projects. And then in December, we're going to present the draft priority list to the board, which to date is 30 or 35 total identified transportation projects in the county, whether that's out of the AMP or the major thoroughfare plan or this IAR or whatever have you. It's that's to date, I believe, all of the projects that we've identified through some sort of study in the county. And then we'll have that conversation in December, and any feedback will be obviously greatly appreciated at that point. And in March of 25, we'll essentially be presenting the final list for consideration. And then for all intents and purposes, it becomes the priority list moving forward. But again, it's important to remember that this is a fluid list. I always say we're one land use case away from a new priority. Ashland Road interchange was a priority for many years. It would be the only priority when Project Rocky was successfully getting their rezoning. And this timeline also sets up for the fall 2025 applications for funding. Really, we'll be able to roll right from the March workshop taking those priorities and then building out our application list for the fall of 25, for the spring of 26, and so on. So that's really setting us up in a good time.
What citizen input, I mean, we're gonna get it one way or the other, I hope we do. How do we encourage or not find this so far along that it's like, oh my gosh, this dog don't hunt? I mean, how do we engage the citizens, the people we work for?
So my goal is for the, obviously the presentation in December in front of the board will be the initial blush and initial feedback sought. At that point, we'll be more than happy to post the list on the county transportation website, and obviously we'll be happy to solicit any comments or concerns that we receive in the months that follow prior to March of 25. And if we need to have another more in-depth conversation in March, that's something we'd be willing to do as well, as far as kind of discerning some of the comments that we got. That's something, you know, I think would make sense to maybe wrap into that final presentation, if you will, in March.
I'm thinking District 5 Town Hall is the 3rd of October. It's in October. Sir?
Is that a Thursday? That's Thursday's the 3rd.
Man,
Yes,
you flatter me. I don't have a calendar.
this town hall is.
Would it even mentioning or touching on this be inappropriate, or would that be?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you can go into the briar patch and
It takes 3 months between each one of these cities.
Just have window workshops on.
Well, no. Well, we have workshops, so, I mean, it's sitting there, I just want to make them.
It felt natural to have them at the workshops. I mean, I'm more than happy to consider presenting the final list sooner than March, whether it's at a board hearing. Really, it's when we hold these workshops or when I plan on presenting these, because it is more of an informal setting rather than presenting from the from the podium to the board at the dais.
If we did pull it up, would that change our cadence of applications for anything that we're working on?
No, really, it would just give us another month or two between that and the fall 2025 application, because CBTA is the only application open, and it opens September of 25.
So there's not much for us to push towards, there's no.
And the March timeframe isn't stretching it as far as us struggling to get those applications in.
I don't want to put any more on you than you've already got. I don't know. You know, days go into weeks and weeks go into months sometimes.
You know,
Your desire to make government more efficient is noted last year.
Any other questions on the project priority process? All right. With that, that's the workshop. I anticipate a little more conversation on a few of the topics, but all right. Any final questions or comments or anything the board would like me to cover in the next workshop besides the prioritization?
One thing that sort of my antenna went up on when you said the funding on the double diamond.
Yes.
You said if they don't pull the plug or something.
Until it's got the rubber stamp.
Integrity, or is it-
Until it's got the rubber stamp by FHWA, I've learned to not count my chickens before they hatch, kind
So
of
it's
thing.
not a done deal. Citizens don't understand that.
It's all
Working towards it.
done for the interchange. But again, I won't believe it till we actually have the report stamped and officially approved.
So I don't detect any real concern.
FHWA was on the last call that I was on with the entire VDOT team. They raised absolutely no concerns, and generally were supportive of the Bennington Road realignment as well. So, yes.
I don't want to go into a full description, but can you give a brief summary of seek funds from any CDTA issued bonds?
Yeah.
So if they were doing a broader bond issuance, we would be a part of that, so
Yes.
that they would get the scope and the size and scale they need to take it to market.
Correct.
And
That's
we
something
benefit
that's
from that pricing.
very much underway now. It's my assumption that there will probably be a call for projects and regarding a bond sometime next year if everything goes according to somebody's plan. Well, I guess you're chairman of the finance committee now, so maybe the plans will change, but
that allows us to hit,
Congratulations.
that allows us to hit market more quickly if needed. I think that's a more efficient than us issuing it by ourselves. Correct.
It could be.
It could. It's another alternative.
So, so where we are with that is, so apparently, and you probably can speak this better than I can, but what CVTA as a as an organization, has to go in front of courts and it has to be almost vetted. We've dumbed it down to say, like, you gotta go to it for pre-approval, but in this case, it's not a bank, it's the courts. So the decision in front of the CBTA right now is, do we even wanna do that? So there's some that say, yes, we do want to, in case we needed to. We want to be ready to be able to issue whatever we need to under whatever structure we come up with. But then there's others that say, no, we don't have any interest in that. So that is the next step, and we got to come to a determination on that. But yes, the conversations have been had where if they do need to say, hey, we're going to go out for bonding, everybody should be able to, if they want to, benefit from the CBTA's existence from that, especially since we're contributing jurisdictions.
And it's something to keep in mind as well, because if that 12.4 does double and turns into 25, that might be out of the realm of possibility for local funds, proffers, and any general fund dollars to be able to cover, certainly.
How realistic, no?
So the CBTA bond, I think, does provide an opportunity potentially to seek I would say, a larger sum of money for the project if needed.
So there are, I would just stress this, there are other benefits to these regional cooperatives than just hard, single allocations that we get. I mean, if we're on the hook for the funds that issued in a bond, but we're taking advantage of that strength of a regional entity to make be an issuer.
Yeah, I'll take the time now to share. Staff, Mr. Carpenter led an effort to put together a white paper for bonding specifically with CBTA. We vetted it with, we haven't vetted it with Mr. Parks. We went down, talked to the executive director to get some more understanding. We're making some updates to that with the intent of sharing it with this board and to come up with hey, I think Mr. Carpenter did a great job outlining the pros and cons and sort of an approach. Once we agree on our approach, then I think my goal will be to shop it with some of the other jurisdictions, especially those that may not benefit specifically from a significant amount of bonding, aka the smalls. Yeah. So once we kind of get that, we should have that relatively soon.
And with respect to the local options, those three little words, issue a bond, I mean, there's a big process, timeline, because it has to be a general obligation of bond in the county, a referendum process, and then also, of course, has to be the funding, the debt service. So there's a lot behind those three little words.
It seems so simple, though, Carol.
But under the local options, not the CBTA. Yes,
right.
That's why it really is a dramatic speed difference to piggyback on the CBTA versus the local option. Yeah.
Once they've got authority for the issue.
Right. Yeah. It's a weird process because we've been granted the authority by the General Assembly, but you got to go through this almost vetting process.
Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board on anything transportation?
I didn't see anything on the East End Trail.
Right now, it's in a holding pattern. I know, Mr. Carpenter, you want to touch on any conversations?
Absolutely. We've, after the last discussion when funds were reallocated to the sidewalk, and we very clearly heard your desire that we either do this trail or not do it, and so we're willing to focus on that, but also another request of just trails in general in the county should be. So I had a meeting with landowners on the east side and discussed this with them. This really is a conversation that started years before any of us perhaps in the room even were working for the county and
You were going to say born, but
but there are a couple fundamental issues that still have to be gotten around that ultimately get into attorneys talking to attorneys about access to the land. But the biggest takeaway from the meeting was that they were very interested in trying to get a trail system going again, and to try to make it work. And so it was a very positive meeting with them. And so with the goal being, as I told them, that the board members just said that they were very interested in seeing something get done that has been promised for well over 12 years now. And can we come up with some plan that will work We believe the funding is available to us through funds we already have available to us, either in proffer money or from local funds. So that really is not the hindrance. It's getting access to the land and getting them comfortable to allow us to access it. So that's kind of where we are.
Is this West Creek landowner?
Yes, sir. At least for a starting point initially.
In following the vice chair's interest in making government more efficient, is there any optimistic or realistic timetable that we might assign to this? Is this the next 6 months or the next 6 years?
This legal issue from the landowners has been the exact same for the entire 7.5 years of mine, and it has not changed or made any progress.
I understand that, so that's why my question was, is there any, based on recent developments or conversations, if nothing has changed, other than we think it's a great idea, but do we just put a stake to it? I mean,
I would like
staff time is valuable, and let's not pursue something we can't do, please.
I completely agree. If I may, I know that the attorney's office is looking to be fully staffed in coming up, and they will be better able to look at their workflow and give me an idea from their perspective what the timeframes might be from where they sit. But right now,
I don't agree there's anything for me to do. We gave our legal advice 7.5 years ago, and the landowners have never been accepting of it or willing to change their stance. There's nothing sitting for me to do, nothing.
Okay.
And I don't have a
6 months.
recent request or anything to take a look at.
So it would be, I'm trying to interpret here. So the landowner would need to be amenable to what the law is. Is that a good way of phrasing it or not?
That's probably what I would phrase it.
Okay, I mean, it's a good way.
We can resubmit that legal advice in case they forgot.
I would say 6 months should be enough time for them to tell us if they're willing to do it or not.
Staff time's valuable.
Any other questions from the board members? Okay. Any citizens in attendance have questions? We trust that y'all can decide to go.
Andy Wingert, I recently moved into Tuckahoe Bridge, Section 2, the bus stop. The big thing there to me is it's not one bus stop. There's 49 homes in there. I think I just happen to be the first with school-age children. I think there's one other family might go to private school. We're currently driving down to St. Matthew's Lane because of the condition and parking on the dead end there. And it's like, at what point do too many people have to drive down there? My kids are 5 and 6, we're driving down there. If there's a junior, are they walking now up and down Rockville Road?
No, indeed.
Like, you know what I mean? Everything, I hear the sign thing, that 70-mile-an-hour car, that sign. Like, don't waste staff time, but signs to me don't help. The other thing that came back from the county was with the restricted, or the schools, not the county, sorry, was with the restricted left turn now. They don't know about bus routing. It wasn't even so much like after the construction's done, it's like, well, now we can only come in one way and go out one way. My bigger thing is I hear the schools, to me, it's all one county organization. There's another development already going in above. There's rezoning below. We missed this one. How are we gonna fix it and not end up with whatever it is, 150 houses that are driving down to St. Matthew's Lane? I don't know. It seems like there's a little bit of like the cul-de-sac. I know it probably meets VDOT requirements for a school bus, but if the schools in the county aren't lined of like what they're seeing, I don't know where that ultimately hedges out, like school buses and cul-de-sacs. Probably VDOT sounds good, it's big enough, but the drivers aren't a huge fan of it. So I know I'm not gonna get a resolution, but I see the problem continuing. I think I'm just the first of 49, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Belinda Moore, 2164 Crawford Road, Mannequin. I applaud my neighbor. We were asked to do a workshop for the community on August the 14th. It had roughly 30 of the neighbors from Tuckahoe Bridge. It was Rob Williamson, Paul Costello, and myself. They had no idea about Highfield. They had no idea about the pre-application, and they had no for the golf course, and they were blown away by Rob Williamson's presentation of information that we were given from the planning. We prefer not to weigh into anything, but only be presenting the facts. I was lucky enough that I was able to get a GIS map that gave them a clear vision of all the development and what stages they're in. As I said, for this gentleman, there was a family, I don't know if he was the family, but there was a family that was over at Angie Fowler's house. When you see a visual of what's going on and you see what's been proposed and what has been approved, it gives them a snapshot of it that's clear and precise. My job is not to fight with the county over anything. I just feel that we are missing the boat with allowing these citizens, even newer citizens, to understand what's already been developed, what's already zoned, that is going to impact them because it's not going away across the street from Rockville Road. Rockville Road has like 8 crosses on it of people who have lost their lives. Grant you, it hasn't been recent, but we've had a number of issues right there at the Tuckahoe Bridge entrance that date back to like March. The records show that there was information about public safety there. Now we have I think what 12 of your neighbors have already moved in. Okay, all right. Oh, okay. We've got 49 homes, and we need to figure out how. I am hoping that Rockville Road will somehow get elevated to get some improvements before Mr. Bent has to make any more white crosses. Because the people that I am hearing from, and now it's not only my Mannequin Road people who are now feel like they're getting hurt, because now it seems like people who would have taken Rockville Road are now cutting through what's called Echo Meadows to get to Mannequin Road. The sheriff's office has gracefully given us data. They put a way to track it. It was up for a week. I'm very thankful to the sheriff's office for doing that. That will give you an idea of the volume there and the speed. It doesn't tell what the car is or anything. It doesn't report any of that. It's just for data. It'd be interesting to see it, because what I've been told by the next door people who have engaged with me, that the ones who live on Rockville Road are going Pontchartrain. If they're close to Pontchartrain to Dogwood Trail to Mannequin Road, because Mannequin Road has a traffic light at the end. Thank you very much for your time. I hope we figure this out.
I'm Louise Thompson, do live in Goshen County. I didn't have anything critical to say. I guess it's my inexperience in coming to these meetings, which is my fault. The Fairground Road speed limit, miles per hour, is that something that's coming up with VDOT? Is there any progress at all on that?
There was a study that was done, it did not recommend lowering speed limit.
Okay, is there anything that the public can do or people can do to get their attention on that?
I don't know if I have an answer for that at the moment.
There are a lot, from that study, there were several recommendations that we are following to potentially make safety improvements on there. So it is something that we've had, I think someone said it today, lowering speed is just extremely difficult. But things like the Maidens Road, Maidens and Fairgrounds intersections, some signage, some striping, that's going to be part of the list and the prioritization that Mr. Going will be putting together.
Thank you. And one other question on the Divergent Diamond, the park and ride that's there now that possibly will be used for staging, does that get moved anywhere else or enlarged, or while they're staging, what happens to that when it's being used?
So it will be relocated and ultimately doubled in size, approximately where that white rectangle is. It's going to be 200 or so total spaces, curb and gutter, it's going to look like a fully built out brand new parking lot rather than the park and ride that we have now.
And Mr. Going, that was approved prior to any DEI.
Yeah, that's completely separate project.
That's completely separate.
Yep.
They were going to plan to do that because of the tight turn. Trying to turn around there with a 8-foot truck. That's
not fun.
It's challenging. That's always full.
Just so they have orientation as well. That's the opposite side of
Yes.
so yeah. So that's on the south side, southwest, southwest. Where's Charlottesville? Yes.
The white bit on, that's wise choice.
Yep.
Yeah,
Everybody
wonderful
knows.
chicken spot.
Times gas there.
Any other citizen comments at this time? Okay. Thank you all. Any other questions from the board? Okay.
I did have a question.
Yes.
A follow-up to Ms. Moore's. Is there another data study that we're aware of from the sheriff's office, or was that what we already went over today?
That's the only one I was aware of.
And it really was less of a study, more of just good data points that the sheriff is sharing with us at our request.
I will expand. I know we were in the, what
No,
was
but
our-
he's doing it over time. They just got the unit to capture it, so this is going to happen over time.
Yeah, well, it's.
where,
Right now, it's just,
sharing with us.
and then it's going to.
You're talking about
Yeah, it was my one. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was involved in court. Okay. See none. Thank you, Austin, and all those
Thank you.
involved, and we will adjourn to the 4 p.m. General Board of Supervisors meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.